Rain painted the city cruel that night, the kind that blurred streetlights into halos and turned blood into ink on wet pavement. She thought she'd finally escaped him, but fate has a way of cornering us in alleys where no one can hear us scream, until someone who makes monsters kneel decides he's heard enough. Welcome back to Mafia Folklore, where love is dangerous, loyalty has a price, and fate never misses its mark. If you're ready for tonight's story, click subscribe, because tomorrow, another heart-pounding tale awaits. Now, let's begin. The neon sign above Chen's diner flickered its final goodbye as Maya pushed through the back door into the alley. 11:30. Half an hour past closing, but Mr. Chen always let her stay late to finish the deep clean. It meant extra pay. It meant the streets were emptier when she walked home. It meant she thought she was safer. She pulled her jacket tighter against the October rain, the kind that felt personal, cold needles against tired skin. Her sneakers splashed through puddles that reflected the city back at her in fractured pieces. Broken glass, graffiti, steam rising from subway grates like the earth was exhaling its disappointments. She'd gotten good at taking the long way home. 3 extra blocks to avoid Sullivan Street. 4 more to stay clear of the park where couples walked and single women didn't, not after dark. She'd memorized which bodegas stayed open late, their fluorescent lights like checkpoints in a video game she never chose to play. But she'd made a mistake tonight. The shortcut through Carmichael Alley had always been safe. Too narrow for cars, too well lit by the restaurant's back door. She hadn't accounted for the light burning out, hadn't accounted for him waiting. Maya. His voice stopped her like a fist to the spine. She didn't turn around, didn't need to. She knew the shape of that voice in the dark. The way you know the sound of a door lock clicking when you're on the wrong side. Keep walking, Marcus. Her voice came out steadier than her hands. She kept moving, keys threaded between her fingers like claws. Useless claws. But holding them made her feel less defenseless. 3 weeks. His footsteps echoed behind her, faster than hers, eating up the distance. You ignore me for 3 weeks? Changed your number. Moved apartments. Like I'm some kind of... We broke up. She walked faster. The alley stretched ahead, like a throat she was being swallowed down. You don't get to... His hand caught her shoulder, spun her around. The brick wall met her back hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. He was close now. Too close. She could smell the whiskey on his breath. See the rage in eyes that used to look at her like she was something precious. When had that changed? When had love started looking like this? Don't get to what? His fingers dug into her shoulders. Check on my girlfriend. Make sure she's not ex-girlfriend. The words cost her. She saw the shift in his face, the way anger crystallized into something sharper. The first slap shocked her more than it hurt, her cheek burning, ears ringing. She'd expected it. He'd done it before. But her body always reacted like it was the first time, like some part of her still couldn't believe this was real. You think you can just leave? His voice cracked, and she almost felt sorry for him. Almost, until his hand fisted in her hair, jerking her head back. After everything I did for you? After I... The second hit split her lip. She tasted copper and rain. Please! She hated how small her voice sounded, hated how many times she'd said that word to him. Please, just let me go. Let you go? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. So you can run to someone else? Find some new guy to... There's no one else! The words ripped out of her, desperate, true. I can't do this anymore, Marcus. Please. His hand pulled back again. She closed her eyes. But the impact never came. Instead, she heard something else. The sharp, precise sound of expensive leather shoes on wet pavement. Slow, deliberate. The kind of steps that didn't hurry because they didn't have to. Marcus's grip on her loosened. Just slightly. Just enough for her to open her eyes and see his face change. Confusion first, then something that looked almost like fear. "I suggest," a voice said from the mouth of the alley, smooth as smoke and twice as dangerous. "You remove your hands, now." Maya's heart, already racing, stumbled into a different rhythm. She turned her head slowly and saw him. The man was a shadow that wore a suit worth more than her yearly rent. Tall, broad-shouldered. The kind of presence that made the alley feel smaller. Made the rain seem to fall around him rather than on him. His face was all angles and controlled violence. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that caught the distant streetlight like a predator's. She knew him. Everyone in this city knew him. Dominic Salvatore. The Salvatore family. The name that made the news when bodies turned up in rivers. When politicians suddenly changed their minds. When entire blocks of the city shifted ownership overnight. The man you didn't look at too long. The man you definitely didn't disobey. And he was looking at Marcus like he was something to be erased. "This doesn't concern you," Marcus said, but his voice had gone thin. His hands were still on her, but loosely now, uncertain. Dominic took 3 steps forward. Just 3. But they felt like an army advancing. "I'm going to say this once." His voice never rose, didn't have to. "Touch her again and die. Not eventually. Not as a threat. Right here, right now. I'll paint this alley with you before the rain washes the evidence away." The air went still. Even the rain seemed to pause. "Before this story goes further, tell me something. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there?" "It helps us know how far the legend of the Mafia travels tonight." Marcus's hands fell away from her like she'd caught fire. Maya stumbled sideways, pressing her back against the brick wall, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Her cheek throbbed. Her lip was bleeding onto her chin, mixing with rainwater. But she couldn't move, couldn't run. She was caught between 2 kinds of danger, and her body couldn't decide which way to lean. "You don't know what you're—" Marcus started, but his voice cracked halfway through. "I know exactly what I'm interrupting." Dominic moved closer, each step measured, deliberate. He didn't rush. Men like him never rushed. A coward beating a woman in an alley because it's the only place he has power. Did I miss anything? Marcus's face flushed red, pride and fury warring with survival instinct. She's not yours. 3 words. Flat. Final. She's not anyone's, and you're going to walk away now while you still can. I'm not afraid of you. The lie hung in the air like a bad smell. Dominic smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Maya had ever seen. Not because it was cruel, but because it was genuine. He was amused. Yes, you are. Your hands are shaking. You've been shifting your weight toward the exit for the last 30 seconds. Your pulse is visible in your neck. He took another step. Now he was close enough that Maya could see the details. The perfectly tailored charcoal suit, the white shirt with no tie, the way his dark hair was slicked back despite the rain. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine or a nightmare. But let's say you're not afraid, Dominic continued, his voice dropping lower. Let's say you're stupid enough to think this ends any way except with you leaving. What happens next? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. I'll tell you. Dominic's hand moved to his jacket, just resting there, not reaching inside. The threat was implied. elegant. You take one more step toward her, and I make a phone call. Within 5 minutes, 6 men arrive. Within 10, you're in the trunk of a car. Within 20, he paused, tilted his head. Well, let's just say the Hudson River keeps secrets. The rain fell harder now, drumming against dumpsters and fire escapes. Maya's teeth were chattering, though she couldn't tell if it was from cold or shock. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, just a flash, she saw something that might have been the man she'd once loved. Confusion. Hurt. The realization that he'd lost her, not to another man, but to his own hands. Then it was gone, replaced by the ugliness she'd come to know too well. This isn't over, he said to her, ignoring Dominic entirely now. You think he's going to protect you? Men like him don't protect anyone. They collect. And when he's done with you? He didn't finish the sentence, because Dominic moved, fast, fluid, like violence was a language he spoke fluently. One moment, he was 5 feet away. The next, his hand was wrapped around Marcus's throat, pressing him back against the opposite wall. I gave you a chance to leave with your teeth, Dominic said quietly. Would you like to try for another? Marcus made a choking sound. His hands came up, trying to pry Dominic's grip loose, but it was like trying to move a statue. Answer carefully, Dominic added. I'm not a patient man. I'll go. The words came out strangled, desperate. I'll go. I won't come back. Dominic held him there for another moment. 2, 3. Long enough to make the point. Then he released him, stepping back with the same controlled grace. Marcus collapsed against the wall, gasping, one hand to his throat. He looked at Maya one last time, and whatever he saw in her face made him flinch. Then he ran. His footsteps echoed down the alley, splashing through puddles, stumbling once but not falling, getting smaller, getting gone. The silence that followed felt heavier than the rain. Maya's knees gave out. She didn't fall, her back was still against the wall, but she slid down slowly until she was sitting on the wet pavement, arms wrapped around herself. Shaking. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving her hollow and heavy all at once. Dominic stood there, watching the mouth of the alley where Marcus had disappeared, making sure he didn't come back. Then, slowly, he turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable. Not angry, not soft, just assessing, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. You're hurt, he said. It wasn't a question. She touched her lip, felt the split, saw the blood on her fingers. I'm fine. You're not. He moved toward her, and she tensed, couldn't help it, couldn't stop her body from remembering that danger came in all shapes, even expensive suits. He saw it, stopped, raised his hands slightly, palms out. A gesture of peace from a man who'd just threatened murder. I'm not going to hurt you, he said simply. But you need medical attention. I just need to go home. Where's home? She hesitated. Giving her address to a man like him felt like handing over ammunition. But lying felt more dangerous. 23rd Street, she said finally. I can take the bus. I'm fine. Thank you for... Her voice cracked. Thank you. Dominic crouched down, not close enough to touch her, but close enough that she could see his face clearly in the dim light. There was a scar on his left eyebrow, another along his jawline. Old wounds, stories she'd never hear. Have you ever trusted someone you were taught to fear? He asked quietly. Then, before she could answer. My car is around the corner. I can take you to a doctor. Someone private, discreet. No questions, no police. Or I can take you home. Your choice. Why? The word came out small, broken. Why would you help me? Something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, maybe memory. Because I was taught that real power isn't hurting people who can't fight back. It's protecting them. He stood, extended his hand. She stared at it, at the scarred knuckles, the expensive watch, the steady fingers that had just been wrapped around Marcus's throat. Behind them, the rain fell. Ahead, the city waited, cold, indifferent, full of alleys and men with fists and closed doors. She took his hand. His grip was firm but careful, helping her to her feet without pulling, without demanding. When she was steady, he released her immediately, stepping back to give her space. This way, he said, gesturing toward the street. She followed. Because what else was there to do? Because going home alone meant waiting for Marcus to find her again. Because sometimes salvation came in strange shapes, and you either took the hand offered or drowned where you stood. A black car waited at the curb. Sleek, expensive, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. A man in a suit stood by the back door. Driver, bodyguard, both. He opened the door without a word. Dominic gestured for her to enter first. She hesitated on the threshold, one foot in the car, one still on the street. The leather interior smelled like money and danger, like a trap that looked like rescue. Where are we going? She asked. Dominic's dark eyes met hers. Somewhere safe, he said. For now, that's all that matters. She got in the car. He slid in beside her, careful to keep distance between them. The door closed with a quiet final click. The driver got in front without asking for directions. The engine purred to life, and as they pulled away from the alley, away from the blood on wet pavement and the echo of her own scream she'd swallowed, Maya looked at the man beside her, the most dangerous man in the city, and wondered if she'd just traded one nightmare for another. Or if, impossibly, she'd stumbled into the only safe place left. Have you ever trusted someone you were taught to fear? Tell us in the comments what you would have done in Maya's place. The doctor's office wasn't an office at all. It was a penthouse apartment in the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors, art that probably cost more than most people's houses. The doctor was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and no questions, the type who'd seen worse things than split lips and developing bruises. She cleaned Maya's wounds with gentle efficiency, applied butterfly bandages, checked her ribs with careful fingers. Nothing broken, she said finally, but you'll be sore for a few days. Ice the bruises, rest, and... She glanced toward the doorway where Dominic waited, far enough away to give privacy but close enough to hear. Don't go back to whoever did this. I won't, Maya said quietly, and meant it. The doctor squeezed her hand once, then left. Dominic appeared in the doorway, still maintaining that careful distance. There's a guest room upstairs. Clean clothes. Everything you need. You should rest. I should go home. To the apartment Marcus knows the address of? He said it gently, but the words still landed like stones. The locks he probably has keys to? That home? She had no answer for that, because he was right. Going home meant waiting, jumping at every footstep in the hallway, checking locks 3 times before sleeping, and still not sleeping. She'd been doing it for months before tonight, and tonight had only made it worse. Stay, Dominic said. One night. Tomorrow we'll figure out something permanent. New apartment, new locks, security if you want it. But tonight, just stay. She should have said no. Should have called a friend, found a shelter, done literally anything except accept help from a man whose last name made people cross themselves. But exhaustion was a heavy thing, and fear was heavier, and sometimes survival meant taking the hand offered even when you didn't trust where it was leading. "Okay," she whispered. One night, the guest room was bigger than her entire apartment. White sheets, soft pillows, a bathroom with heated floors and a shower that had 6 different settings. She stood under the water until it ran cold, watching blood and rain and the residue of fear spiral down the drain. Someone had left clothes on the bed, sweatpants and a t-shirt, both too large, both impossibly soft. She should have felt like a prisoner. Instead, she felt like she could finally breathe. When she emerged, the apartment was quiet. Dim lights, the kind of silence that felt intentional, not empty. She followed the soft glow to the kitchen and found him there. Dominic stood at the counter, tie gone, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, making coffee? He looked different here, less like a headline and more like a person. She could see the tiredness around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Didn't try." She hovered in the doorway, uncertain. "I'm sorry, You should sit." He gestured to the bar stools. "And eat. When's the last time you had a real meal?" She thought about it. Yesterday's lunch break? The day before? Time had become strange lately, measured in shifts at the diner and hours spent avoiding certain streets. He took her silence as answer. Within minutes, he'd assembled a plate: bread, cheese, fruit, things that didn't require cooking but felt intentional anyway. He set it in front of her, along with coffee in a mug that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. "Thank you," she said. Then, because the question was eating at her, "Why are you doing this?" Dominic leaned against the counter, his own coffee cupped in scarred hands. "Do you want the simple answer or the complicated one?" "Both." He almost smiled. "Simple. Because I could. Because I was there. Because men who hurt women are cowards, and I don't tolerate cowards in my city." "And the complicated one?" His expression shifted, something darker moving behind his eyes like a shadow passing over deep water. "Because I know what it's like to feel powerless, and I know what it's like to be saved by someone you should have feared." The vulnerability in those words shocked her more than anything else that had happened tonight. She took a sip of coffee to give herself time to process. It was perfect. Somehow, he'd made it exactly how she liked it without asking. "You made a phone call," she said, remembering. "While I was with the doctor." "I heard you through the door." "To make sure Marcus understands that staying away isn't optional." He met her eyes. "And to make sure your landlord knows you're breaking your lease, effective immediately. You won't lose your deposit." She should have been angry at the presumption. Instead, she felt relieved. "You can't just rearrange people's lives." "I can. I do. Usually for worse reasons." He set his coffee down. "But if it bothers you, I'll undo it. Your choice. Always your choice." That phrase again. Your choice. Like he was trying to give back something Marcus had spent months taking away. "Would you risk your peace to protect someone you barely know?" she asked quietly, echoing something she couldn't quite name. Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then, "I already did, tonight. And I'd do it again." 3 days became 4, became a week. She should have left, found her own place, reclaimed her independence. But Dominic's penthouse had become a strange kind of sanctuary. a place where she could heal without looking over her shoulder, where silence felt safe instead of threatening. He was gone during the days, doing whatever mafia bosses did. She didn't ask, didn't want to know. But he always came back before dark, and they developed a rhythm. Coffee in the kitchen, quiet conversations that revealed fragments of each other in careful doses. She learned he took his coffee black and bitter, that he read Russian literature and played piano when he couldn't sleep, that the scar on his jaw came from his father and the one on his eyebrow from saving his younger sister when he was 15. That he'd inherited his empire and his enemies in equal measure. He learned she'd wanted to be a teacher before student loans, and bad luck had derailed her plans. That she loved old movies and hated loud noises. That her mother had died when she was 12, and her father had disappeared into bottles and strangers' couches. That she'd thought Marcus was different until different became the same, became worse. They didn't touch, maintained their careful distance. But something was building in that space between them, trust forming like ice crystals, delicate and surprisingly strong. One night, she found him on the balcony, rain falling again. It was always raining in this city, staring at the skyline like he was counting his sins in streetlights. "Can't sleep?" she asked, echoing his words from that first night. "Old habit." He didn't look at her. "I don't sleep much." She moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him but not touching. Because of nightmares, or because of the things that would give other people nightmares? Both. The honesty surprised her. He'd been careful until now, showing her only the edges of himself. This felt like more. Like he was testing whether she'd run. She didn't run. "I used to think," she said quietly, "that if I just tried harder, loved better, became smaller, Marcus would stop. That it was something I was doing wrong. It wasn't. I know that now." She looked at him then, really looked, at the sharp angles of his face softened by rain and darkness, at the way he held himself like he was carrying weight no one else could see. "You said someone saved you once." "Someone you should have feared." "My uncle." He finally turned to meet her eyes. "When I was 16, my father tried to kill me. Political reasons, succession, the usual family drama when your family trades in violence. My uncle, my father's brother, intervened, protected me, taught me that power without mercy is just cruelty with a crown." "Is that why you stopped Marcus? In the alley?" "I stopped Marcus because he was hurting you. But yes, my uncle taught me that the strong protect the weak not because it's profitable, but because it's right. Even when, especially when, the world expects you to do otherwise." Thunder rumbled in the distance. The city sprawled below them, 1,000 stories in 1,000 windows. "I should be afraid of you," Maya said. "You should be. But I'm not." "Not anymore." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. He took a step closer, and she didn't step back. They were inches apart now, rain misting their faces, the world reduced to this balcony and this moment. "Maya," he said, and her name in his voice sounded like a prayer. "You're safe here, for as long as you want to stay. No expectations, no price. Just safe." She believed him. Against all logic and self-preservation, she believed him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, giving her time to refuse. His hand cupped her bruised cheek with impossible gentleness, thumb brushing the fading yellow where Marcus's handprint had been. "He never deserved you," Dominic said quietly. And if he ever comes near you again, there won't be a warning. There won't be mercy. There will only be an ending. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Like safety wearing the face of violence, because sometimes that's what salvation looked like. She leaned into his touch, just slightly. Just enough. And in that moment, standing in the rain with the most dangerous man in the city, holding her like she was something precious, Maya realized she'd stopped running, stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped believing she deserved the pain. She'd started believing in second chances, in guardian angels who wore Armani, in the possibility that love could grow in the most unlikely soil. She'd started believing in him. 2 weeks after the alley, the world came for them. It started with a photograph slipped under his office door, Maya leaving the penthouse, coffee in hand, smiling at something on her phone. Unaware, unguarded, vulnerable, no note, no demands, just the picture and the message it carried. We know. We see her. We can reach her. Dominic stared at that photograph for 3 minutes without moving. Then he made 7 phone calls in rapid succession, each one colder than the last. By nightfall, 6 of his men were stationed around the building. 2 more followed Maya's every movement. Security that felt like a cage. She noticed immediately. "Who are they?" she asked that evening, gesturing to the window where a black SUV sat with its engine running. "The men watching the building?" He could have lied, should have lied, given her some comfortable fiction about routine security. But he'd promised her choice, and choice required truth. "Insurance," he said. "Someone knows you're here, someone who wants to hurt me through you." The color drained from her face. "What?" He showed her the photograph, watched her hand shake as she held it, watched understanding dawn like a slow-motion car crash. "This is because of me," she whispered. "Because you helped me, because I stayed. This is because I have enemies who are cowards." He took the picture from her, set it aside. "But yes, being near me comes with consequences. I should have explained that sooner. I'm sorry." She stepped back, wrapped her arms around herself. The gesture was so familiar now, her armor, her retreat. "You said I was safe here." "You are. I have. Safe from Marcus." Her voice cracked, anger and fear bleeding together. "Not from whatever this is. Not from your world. I thought—" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "God, I was so stupid. I thought I'd found somewhere I could breathe, and instead, I just traded one cage for another. Maya—" "No." She backed toward the hallway. "No, you don't get to. I need to think. I need to—" She disappeared into the guest room. The door clicked shut, not slammed. Worse, quiet, final. Dominic stood alone in the living room, rain beginning to tap against the windows again, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Helplessness. He could kill the people who'd sent that photograph. Would kill them. But he couldn't undo the fact that his protection had become her prison. He couldn't fix this with violence. She didn't emerge that night, or the next morning. He left coffee outside her door, a peace offering, a habit, a hope. It sat there untouched. By afternoon, his phone rang, his head of security. The voice was clipped, professional, carrying bad news like a bullet. They took the bait. 3 of Constantine's men hit the decoy apartment on 5th. "We have them contained, but—" A pause. "Boss, this was reconnaissance. They're testing our response times, building a profile. They're planning something bigger." Dominic closed his eyes. Konstantin Volkov, Russian Mafia. Old grudges and new ambitions, the kind of enemy who'd burn down a city block to kill one man. Increased security, double shifts, no one in or out without verification. Already done. But boss, the girl, if Constantine thinks she matters to you, he won't stop. You know that. He did know that. Knew it like he knew his own heartbeat. Knew it like he knew that loving anything in his world was painting a target on it. I'll handle it, he said, and ended the call. That evening, he knocked on her door, waited. When she opened it, her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. She'd cried herself out. Now she just looked tired. I'm leaving, she said before he could speak. Tomorrow, you're going to give me enough money for first and last month's rent somewhere far from here. New city, new name if necessary. And we're going to forget this happened. Maya! It's the only way. Her voice was steady now, resolved. You said it yourself. Being near you comes with consequences. I've spent my whole life running from men who hurt me. I can't stay and wait for your enemies to finish what Marcus started. What if I said no? Then I'd leave anyway. Because you also said this was my choice. Always my choice. She met his eyes. So I'm choosing to survive. He should have agreed, should have put her on a plane that night with enough money to start over 3 times. It was the smart move, the safe move, the move that kept her alive and him focused on the war Constantine was starting. But standing there, looking at her, at the woman who'd learned to laugh again in his kitchen, who'd fallen asleep reading on his couch, who'd started looking at him like he was more than the monster headlines painted. He realized something terrifying. He'd fallen in love with her, not the distant, controllable kind, the reckless kind. The kind that made smart men stupid and careful men careless. The kind that made him want to burn his empire to ash if it meant keeping her safe. What if, he said quietly, I went to war for you? She blinked. What? Konstantin Volkov, the man who sent that photograph. He's testing me, seeing if you're leverage. If I let you go, if I hide you away, he'll interpret that as weakness. He'll push harder. Find you eventually. Use you to break me. He stepped closer. But if I make it clear that you're not leverage, that you're the line no one crosses, then you become untouchable. Too dangerous to target, because the cost would be absolute. You're talking about starting a war over... She gestured helplessly. Over me? A waitress you met in an alley 2 weeks ago? I'm talking about starting a war over you. Period. He let her see it now, the truth he'd been trying to hide. Because somewhere between that alley and this moment, you stopped being a person I was protecting and became the person I... He stopped. The words too big, too true. You became someone I'm not willing to lose. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You barely know me. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and watch old movies when you're sad. I know you hum when you cook, and you're terrible at hiding when something's bothering you. I know you're stronger than you think, and braver than you should have to be. He reached for her hand slowly, gave her time to pull away. She didn't. I know that when you smile, really smile, it's the best thing I've seen in a decade of seeing terrible things. Dominic, you want to leave? I'll help you. New city, new life, protection from a distance, whatever you need. He squeezed her hand gently. But if you stay, if you trust me one more time, I promise you this. No one will ever hurt you again. Not Marcus, not Constantine, not anyone. Because I will burn this city down before I let them touch you. The rain fell harder outside. The city glittered below, oblivious to the choice being made in this room. Would you really? She whispered. Risk everything? Your empire? Your life? For me? Yes. Would you risk your peace to protect someone you barely know? Tell us in the comments, is love worth going to war for? The word hung between them like a bridge, like a knife, like salvation. I'm terrified, she said. So am I. If I stay, if I choose you, there's no going back. I'll be part of your world. Your targets become mine. Your enemies become mine. Yes. And if you lose, if Constantine, I won't. Not arrogance, certainty. But if I did, I'd make sure you were safe first. Always. She looked at their joined hands, at the contrast, his scarred knuckles, her delicate fingers, violence and vulnerability, darkness and light. I don't know if I'm brave enough for this, she admitted. You are. You've been brave your whole life. This is just a different kind of courage. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles softly. Stay. Trust me. Let me show you what protection really looks like when it comes from someone who... His voice caught. Someone who loves you? There it was. The truth. Naked and dangerous and irrevocable. Maya looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd stepped into an alley like an avenging angel. Who'd given her safety when she'd forgotten what it felt like. Who'd made her coffee every morning and never asked for anything in return. Who was offering to start a war just to keep her whole. The smart choice was to run. The safe choice was distance. But maybe, just maybe, the right choice was the one that felt like coming home. Okay, she breathed. I'll stay. The war lasted 3 days. Not the kind with bullets in the streets. Dominic was too smart for that, and Constantine too careful. This was a war fought in backrooms and bank accounts, in whispered phone calls and sudden disappearances. Territory shifted. Alliances fractured. Old debts were called in like prayers to vengeful gods. Maya watched it from the penthouse, safe behind reinforced glass and armed guards, and tried not to think about what each phone call cost. What each terse conversation meant. Dominic would disappear for hours, come back with blood on his knuckles or exhaustion carved into his face, and she'd clean his wounds without asking questions. On the second night, he came home at 3 a.m. to find her awake, curled on the couch with tea gone cold and fear gone hot. It's done, he said simply. Done? Constantine withdrew his claim, pulled his men back, issued a formal apology through channels. He sat beside her, close enough to touch but not touching, still giving her space. You're safe, officially untouchable. What did you do? What I had to. He looked at her then, and she saw the weight of it in his eyes. I made it clear that hurting you would cost more than anyone was willing to pay. That protecting you wasn't a weakness, it was a promise. And I keep my promises. She should have asked for details, should have demanded to know what I had to meant in his world. But she was learning that some kinds of love meant accepting that the man who made her coffee also made people disappear. That safety sometimes wore a dark suit and spoke in quiet threats. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me for doing what I should have done differently from the start. His hand found hers. I should have kept you at a distance, should have realized sooner that my world and yours couldn't mix without... Stop. She squeezed his hand. I chose to stay, remember? My choice. That means the consequences are mine too. Maya... She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't strategic. It was just need. The need to show him that she wasn't afraid anymore, that she was choosing him, all of him, darkness and light and everything between. He froze for half a heartbeat, surprised. Then his hand cupped her face, careful of the fading bruises, and he kissed her back like she was air, and he'd been drowning. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. No preamble, no poetry, just truth, raw and real. "I know it's too soon and too complicated, and probably the worst possible. I love you too." She smiled through tears. "And yes, it's all those things. But maybe that's what makes it real." 3 months later, the rain came again. But this time, Maya stood on the balcony with coffee warming her hands and Dominic's arm around her waist. And the rain felt like a baptism instead of a burial. She'd moved in officially, not just clothes in the guest room, but books on the shelves and her terrible abstract painting hung in the hallway, and her laugh echoing through rooms that had been too quiet for too long. She'd started teaching again. Just tutoring, just a few students, but it was a start. A return to the person she'd been before Marcus had tried to erase her. "Penny for your thoughts," Dominic murmured against her hair. "I was thinking about that night, the alley, how I thought I was going to die there." His arm tightened around her. "You almost did. But I didn't, because you appeared like—" She laughed softly. "Like some avenging angel with a death threat and an expensive suit. Guardian demon, maybe. My guardian demon." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. "Do you ever regret it? Stopping that night? Everything that came after?" He was quiet for a moment, studying her face like he was memorizing it. "Not for a single second." "You?" She thought about Marcus, about the fear that had defined her for so long, thought about the scars, his and hers, that had learned to coexist, thought about this strange, imperfect, dangerous love that had grown in the ruins of their broken pieces. "Maybe love really is the only thing worth breaking the rules for," she said softly. Dominic smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. "Breaking the rules is what I do best." "Lucky me." "No." He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips, soft, sure, safe. "Lucky us." The rain painted the city silver below them, washing away the past and making space for the future. Somewhere out there, Marcus was living a small life in a small town, too terrified to ever return. Somewhere out there, Constantine was licking his wounds and learning the cost of underestimating devotion. But here, in this moment, on this balcony, with the dawn breaking pink and gold on the horizon, there was only them. Two broken people who'd found each other in an alley where love wore the face of violence and salvation came with a death threat. Maya had learned that safety wasn't always soft, that protection sometimes carried scars, that the strongest man she'd ever met was also the gentlest when it mattered. And Dominic had learned that power meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. That loving someone didn't make you weak, it made you invincible. That the woman trembling in an alley 2 months ago was now the reason he woke up wanting to be better than the world expected. She'd stopped running. He'd stopped hiding. Together, they'd built something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. Love born from violence, trust grown from fear, hope rising from despair. The rain fell, the city woke, and they stood together, watching the sunrise paint the world new. Two souls who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to create their own light. "Touch her again and die," he'd said that night in the alley. But what he'd really meant was, "I'll keep you safe. I'll give you choice. I'll love you through the fear until you remember how to love yourself." And she'd heard it. Finally heard it. The world was still dangerous. His enemies still circled. Her past still haunted. But here, in his arms, with rain washing the city clean and dawn promising new beginnings, Maya knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was home. Not in a place, not in safety, in him. And that was worth every risk, every rule broken, every war fought. Rain painted the city silver when she'd stumbled into his path. The man every headline feared, and the only one who would ever call her safe. Now, the rain painted them together, and that made all the difference. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and click on the next video. It's darker, deeper, and even more unforgettable. You don't want to miss it. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and comment your country or city in the comments. Your support helps us create more contents like this.